We have to get serious about our faith. It's time. I'm telling you, it's time. Look at the story of Chanukah and think about it. It's a picture, it's a shadow of the end. It's a shadow of the end. What kind of things happened? The Greeks came in, they're talking about tolerance. They're talking about universalism. You can keep your God. That's okay. That's how it starts. It's all good. Everyone's good. You're good. I'm good. We're all good. We respect you. You respect us. It's all good. Assimilation starts. People start to drift away from God. They start to drift away and accept foreign gods and foreign cultures. In the beginning, it's a cultural thing. They start to take their clothes off and go to exercise in the gymnasium, the Greek gymnasiums in Jerusalem, for example. Like the Greeks do. You know, there are things you got to do. You know, times change. You got to keep up. You don't want to be on the wrong side of history. You want to make it in the world. Assimilation. Little at a time. Pretty soon, you got people buying the high priesthood. How can you buy a high priesthood? He doesn't own the high priesthood. How can he sell it to you? What happened? And then a lot of the people who assimilated, there's no problem with that. It's just how we do things now. Keep up. Your ways are antiquated. The Word of God, whatever. Pretty soon you have a proclamation coming out. You got a guy coming in, this foreign leader who sold the high priesthood. Now he's sacrificing pigs, setting in the altar, to the altar of God. Talk about compromising the way that you worship. Now he's setting up, he's saying, oh, your God is the God of the universe. Well, that's Zeus. Now he's setting up an idol of Zeus in the temple that he's sacrificing the pig to. Not that Word of God stuff. That's antiquated. We don't want to live by that stuff. Now he's taking the blood from the pig that's sacrificed and pouring it out on top of the Torah scrolls and burning them, cutting them up and burning them. People who assimilated, that's just how we do it now. We got to acknowledge, if God's really the God of the universe, well, that's just their name for him, Zeus. Isn't it? Those laws about this and laws about that, those are antiquated. We don't do things, we do things differently now. They don't matter, right? Then comes a proclamation. See, first it began inclusiveness, universalism, tolerance for everyone. Not anymore. Now you get a proclamation. Then you get those things happening that we talked about. Then you wind up with a proclamation. Everyone will conform. This is the new religion. This is the new way. Hellenism reigns supreme. You will assimilate. Or you will die. Everyone is to give up their ways, to give up their customs, to give up their gods, and follow our ways. Because our ways are the universal ways, they are the tolerant ways. Follow them or die. Very tolerant. It's where we're headed. Hey, I said it that way, but that's where we're headed. It's not really funny. It's the same thing that happened before. And look, this is no accident. Daniel wrote about Antiochus. He wrote about Alexander. He wrote about Chanukah before it happened. And he used talked about very specific things there. Very specific numbers of days, for example, that match periods of numbers of days that you read about in Revelation, when there will be an abomination of desecration again at another temple. In a time frame where a man of lawlessness, a man against the Torah, a man of lawlessness will rise up as the world leader. It's happening again. And now it's happening for the last time. I believe that. I don't know how long it'll take. But I can see the culture all around the world this time changing. I can see craziness. Things you wouldn't have imagined would have happened in this country are now not just accepted, but not just the norm, but those things that you wouldn't have, they're just so vile you wouldn't even have imagined them happening here. Now they're looked at like good things. That's good. And if you speak against it, you're evil. They came in the same way. They came in talking about, you know, we need to tolerate everyone. Their beliefs are a little different than you. That's okay. You just need to, you know, tolerate. Tolerance used to mean everyone tolerate each other. Everyone, okay? And now it means something else. You need to tolerate us, but we don't need to tolerate you. No tolerance for you. Only tolerance for the things we say there's tolerance for. Sounds very familiar. You know, it used to be Bibles were in all the schools. They used to teach Bible classes in all the schools. I don't know if you know that. They actually used to teach the Bible in our schools. Then they got rid of the Bibles in the schools, right? At least officially, right? They didn't put Bibles in the schools. They didn't put them in the schools. But you could bring one if you wanted to, you know, but they didn't put them there. Now, you get in trouble. Some schools, you get in trouble for bringing a Bible to school. You get suspended and whatnot. Now, we're still at a point where people like ACLJ, you can go to them. Help! My kid just got kicked out of school because he brought a Bible to school. And they can still say, thank God, we still have a foundation and some sense of acknowledgement of it where there's freedom of religion, and you can then sue the school, right, for your freedom. It's not far off where that will change. Just like before. It's not far away. They'll start making laws against it. Think of the portrayal. It used to be, wow, you watch some old shows, Gunsmoke, Leave It to Beaver, these old shows, right? And you see people in church sometimes singing a hymn, right? You see people praying. You see a wagon train. There's like a Jewish guy on the episode, brings out his tallis and he's praying for people and stuff like that. And that was like the norm. It was like, this is our culture. This is where we come from. Why shouldn't it be there? It's reflected. It's who we are. When you see religious people on shows now, what are they? They're almost always crazy people, like a mass murderer. You know, I saw there's a movie about Chanukah coming out pretty soon, a movie called Chanukah coming out soon. It's a horror movie. It's a horror movie. I'd say look at the preview, but I don't want you to look at the preview. It's disgusting. There's an orchestrated effort to make anyone who believes in the Bible look like they're nuts. And to look at the commandments as antiquated. In our schools, we're teaching kids now, there's no real good and evil. This is the trend. There's no real good and evil. The idea, the concept of good and evil was something that man came up with in different cultures, and that's why it's different in different cultures, the concepts of good and evil. What you say is evil, I might not say is evil. It's very subjective. God is the one who makes the distinction. He's the one who makes the differentiation. Havdalah, the differentiation. He's the one. He made the rules. Yeah, I'm not talking about any God. The God of the Bible is the one that made the rules. He says what's good and what's evil. Man didn't do that. Man spread across the earth in different groups. And there are things that are forgotten, things that are not. You know, you go through this room, you could do the experiments, right? I could whisper in Lourdes' ear 3 sentences, and she could whisper in her ear, and she whispers in his ear, and he whispers in her ear. And you get to Kathy over here, and you get 3 totally different sentences, if you even have 3 sentences by then. You might have more or less sentences. Imagine family groups over thousands of years spreading over all the earth, separated from each other, trying to pass down what they understood, what they heard as good and evil. This is an explanation that makes sense biblically, how different cultures developed understandings of what was good and evil. But see, that doesn't fit the agenda. Because people spreading out from one place over all the earth, that kind of sounds like the Bible. We've got to have a different explanation, right? I'm telling you, it's coming. The older you get, the more clearly you'll see it. Little by little, it's coming. I don't think it has anything to do with what I was going to talk about. And shalom, Shabbat shalom. So why don't we do that? Maybe I'll go faster through it, though. Maybe I'll just go through the slides and not look at my notes. And I'll go, that'll probably do it. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. And I apologize for people on the web who may or may not be able to see the slides behind me. I'll see if I can adjust the camera a little bit, or if somebody could maybe try to help with that. I don't know. Let's see what they say. It's a little far away. Maybe you can read it. I think you can read that particular slide. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to talk about the light of the world. But first, before we get to that, I do want to, at least I know some people who probably practiced really hard on their verses. So we won't do all of the blessings. They were short, so we can get to our own egg, right? Because we want to have some fellowship together. We want to play some dreidel, and all of that. And so, and get some Chanukah geld. Chanukah geld. And so we'll just, we'll do an opening blessing, and then we'll read the 3 verses, and we'll do a closing blessing. All right? Sometimes we do that, we shorten things. It's okay. Hey, Shabbat Shalom. All right. So if you want to look with me, page 66. And we'll just stand where we are. When you do reading, just stand up where you are. You don't have? Okay. We won't do this. You can do it in English, sure. You have the verse? You can do it.
You looked at me, so I thought that it was fine.
You've got the breed.
Oh, I do have. Okay, I'll be reading it in English.
But if you don't have it, it's okay.
No, I just don't have it.
Talmud Zakir bat Adonai la Torah. Talmud Miriam bat Mordechai la Haftarah. Talmud Shlosha bat Yosef lebrit HaChadashah. And if you'll join me, page 65 in the middle. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. In English, blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has chosen us from all peoples and given us his Torah. Blessed are you, O Lord, giver of the Torah. Yeah, please. I guess we do want to go up to the card. I apologize because we want to use the mic so people can hear. And by that I mean Facebook people. We can hear each other here. Fine. Mm-hmm.
The verse I'm reading today is from Numbers chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Vaydober Adonai el Moshe lemor, Tzav et bnei Yisrael, Vishalchu min hamachaneh, kol tzarua, v'chol zav, v'chol tameh lanafesh. Order the people of Israel to expel from the camp everyone with sara'at, everyone with a discharge, and whoever is unclean because of touching a corpse.
What do we learn from that? Why does he say to do that? I mentioned earlier, why does he say to do that? It says right after is why. Because I am in your midst. I'm living there. And so no purity can exist in his presence. It's really protecting them. They wouldn't be able to survive in his midst. You see? It's not like casting them away or something, but protecting them, really. Including people who are mourning. You can touch a dead body is one of the things. It would make you impure for a while. So you have to go out of the, come back into the camp later. Lourdes?
I'll be reading Psalm 62, 3. Ahu, Surim, Vishuati, Niskavi, Lo, Mot, Rabah. And in English, he alone is my rock and salvation, my stronghold. I won't be greatly moved.
Armaos Tzur, Rock of Ages, right? That's it.
We'll be reading from Luke 2, verses 34 through 35. get there. Then Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, "Many Jews will fall, and many will rise because of this boy. He will be a sign from God that some will not accept. So the secret thoughts of many will be made known, and the things that happen will be painful for you, like a sword cutting through your heart."
What's that about?
It's about a lot. It is about a lot. And I picked that one specifically out of Luke because of the season, of course. And I was reading through it, and Simeon, you know, Simeon was a guy who was just kind of living out his purpose, and which was, the Messiah. He was waiting for the Messiah, like his whole life. It was like a very pivotal moment for him. He was waiting for the Messiah, and he finally got to see the Messiah. And he was letting, what struck me the most was that his parents were amazed, right? That's what hit me when I read that. Like Joseph and Mary, they had seen the angel, they knew everything, but they were still amazed. And isn't that like us when we know God, we see miracles, I know it happens to me, and we're still amazed by truth. And this is talking about, that many Jews will fall and many will rise because of this boy, and he will be a sign from God that some will not accept. I think we see that today very much. And the secret thoughts of many will be made known. That's what Messiah does. Things that are going to be painful, our secret thoughts, will be made known on that day of judgment. Messiah is going to judge us. And we all have secret thoughts, and they will be. So we better have our hearts right and not just do things to do things, right? Our hearts have to be right. Kavanah is what they do with others.
Yeah.
But give us the rabbi commentary.
Perfect. And so we have to, and so at some point, because our minds are corrupt. The Bible says man's mind is corrupt. Always continually thinking about evil and stuff. So when you come to Messiah, right? One of our prayers, he's got to change our thinker. I remember somebody using that term, our thinker. We don't think right. We've got to change our thinker. So we won't be a stinker. So change our thinker, the way that we think. What motivates us? Right? And what should motivate us? I think if you've been a believer for a while, I hope that has changed. Think about it. What are your life goals? What did your life goals used to be? And what's the goal of your life now? I hope that if you're a believer, that's changed significantly over time. What is our purpose here on the earth? You can be seated. Sorry. Right? What's our purpose here on the earth? Why are we here? Why were we created? And if you don't know those things, if you didn't know those things in the past, then your life had a totally different orientation, a whole different focus, right? But what should your goal be now? Let me throw it out there. What should our goal be?
Love God with all the heart, mind, and soul.
I can't hear very well.
Love the Lord with all your heart, mind, and soul.
Heart, mind, soul, and strength. Meaning what? How do we worship him with our strength?
all your being. With work.
Give me some
With
examples.
your body, with your works, what you do physically.
Okay?
There's all
That's-
that strength.
That's part of it. What we do with our bodies. So what kind of things can we do with our bodies to worship Him?
Serve, help.
Serve what? Who?
People.
Where? Help
Serve
who?
in-
What?
serve-
Where?
Serve
When?
in the congregation is one, serve outside of the congregation in our families and our communities. Just being a witness in general. And to be transformed, for me, the purpose, the ultimate goal is to be transformed to become like Yeshua. That's really my ultimate goal, is to ever, always to keep trying to change and be more like Him in every way, which was completely dedicated to God, knowing His purpose. He was really very dedicated, very dedicated. And He always looked to the Father for everything while He was here. And He always took care of other people too. He always made time to heal and to restore things around Him.
If we were to write the story of the Good Samaritan today, why do you think the clergy would be passing by that person? Why do you think people would be passing by the guy that's beat up in the road? Why do you think they did it then? What kind of motivations? What was on their mind? What were they doing? I'll make myself unclean if I touch this person. Maybe he's dead and I have to serve at the temple today. Maybe the people are still around, and if I slow down, if I pretend I don't notice, maybe they'll let me go. What other kinds of things? I don't really care about people. I don't care about that guy. Why should I stop to help somebody? I might get my suit dirty.
Thinking of their own agenda too. Like, I ain't got time for this, like everybody today, they ain't got time for that.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. I don't have time to stop. I don't have time. You see an old lady stuck on the side of the road or has got a flat tire and you have to get to work. Do you stop to help her with her flat tire? Hey, don't you have time for that? It's raining outside. Worse yet, snowing outside. You gonna leave her there? Are you too busy to help people? Is it a kid screaming for help in the middle of the pool or in the ocean? And you know how to swim and there's no lifeguard? What are you gonna do?
Go after.
I hope so. What if your lunch break is over though and you gotta get back? Really? But those are real life stressors on us all the time. There are things that get in our way. If we're honest, aren't they? And they can keep us from doing the right thing if we let them. What is our main focus? What are we really here for? Is it to make more money? Is it to make ourselves more comfortable? Nero, if you were alive in the days of Nero, there's a movement of people who want, whose goal is to worship God or worship God to be rich. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm talking about? And some will say, if you're not rich as a believer, it means that your faith is weak. Do you believe that? Do you believe Yeshua, by the way, no one told him apparently, had no home. His parents, when they went to the temple, they had to do the alternate sacrifice because they couldn't afford to do the regular sacrifice. There are principles in the Bible that will help you to get ahead in worldly things like that. In a general, they're general practical ways is what they are. And they're not implying that should be the focus of your life, though. Talking about certain proverbs, for example, and whatnot. Do you understand? And those are in normal, godly sort of environments. Because you know what? There were probably a lot of smart, enterprising people who were burned as torches in the Roman capital, to light, so that there would be light for Nero to eat his evening dinner. Because he did that, He had believers covered in tar, put on stakes, and lit on fire. Do you think it was because that happened to them because they weren't faithful? I think it's the opposite of that. So when you hear certain theologies, you need to be careful about what you accept. Does that make sense? We can't just flow with the tide. We can't just say, well, that's just what we believe. That's just how things are now. Sort of mentalities. Like in the story of the Maccabees. Okay, there I go again. All right, number 73, I'm sorry. 73, 74, if you want to join me with Eitz Chaim. And then we'll do the message quickly. Eitz Chaim hi l'machasikim ba v'tomcheha b'ushar daracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom Shivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Talking about the scripture, it is a tree of life to those who take hold of it, and those who support it are praiseworthy. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Bring us back, Lord, to you, and we shall come. Renew our days as of old. If those who support it are praiseworthy, what are those who attack it? What are those who disregard it, who consider it antiquated and insignificant? Okay. So last week I brought the menorah. How many, the candlestick, candelabra with 7 branches menorah, right? And you see up here, is it up there? Good, okay. You see the one that's up here. We know how many branches, right? How many branches? 9. Why? Because the miracle, when we retook the temple in the war against the Syrian Greek tyrant that we've been talking about, right? The menorah had been defiled. We had to rebuild it. There's a certain kind of oil that has to be burned in there, not just any oil. And so there was only one small vial, just enough to burn one day. We had to make the decision. Talked about it earlier. Made the decision, right? And it wound up burning for 8 days until more could be manufactured. Manufactured, not really the best word. Produced. Okay, that works. And so that was a miracle from God, showing us that He was on our side in this story. Of course, this is only found in the Talmud, this particular part of the story. If you didn't know, it's only in the Talmud. So, some will claim that that part is just a tale, and think of reasons why to discard it. I don't know. It doesn't seem all that. There are miracles in the scripture that are much greater than that. I don't know why this particular one would be something you'd want to attack. But yeah, it can't prove, it's not in the scripture, so it's a little difficult to be 100% sure about the 8 days, just so you know. So the lamps that we use, the candle, if you use candles, like this one uses candles, the one we have at home, if you see our website, you know, the picture with the oil, little vials of oil, that sort of thing. Or if you went to some of the events in town this week, they're pretty awesome, especially the one with the helicopter, right? Dropping the Chanukah gelt from the helicopter on the kids and stuff. And the foam machines covering them with snow and all that sort of thing. It really was foam, whatever. So that stuff was fun. But those are all those lamps are burning oil. Even if it's candles, this time of year, there's special candles that are made from oil. Why? All the foods that we eat this time of year, well, not everything, or we'd probably die. But a lot of the food that we eat is fried in what? Fried in oil, right? Why? Why all the oil? To remind us of the miracle of oil. Right? Make sense? What else do when you think about the scriptures, when you think about oil, what else do you think about? Is there anything else do you think about that deals with oil in the scriptures?
Psalm 23.
Psalm 23.
Anoint my head with oil.
Anoint my head with oil. We anoint certain individuals were anointed. It was part of a process of consecration, setting them apart for God. All of them would be shadows of an ultimate, kings to an ultimate king, prophets, priests to the ultimate high priest, who is Mashiach, right? The Messiah, who is anointed with oil, right? Which is why Jewish believers, we call it in the Hebrew say Mashiach, or Messianic. Mashiach, right? Okay. We could go to the Greek boat. We're not going to today. All right. We talked about the birth and different times it may have been and why. So I'm going to skip here. Chanukah gel. We give our kids gifts on all 8 nights of Chanukah. That's only because they used to feel bad when the Christian children getting all their toys and stuff. So, however, they still play with the dreidel. And we talked about the dreidel has letters on the side. What do they stand for?
Great miracle up in there.
Okay, what is it in here in Hebrew? Neskadol Haya Sham. Right, or if you're in Israel, Neskadol Haya Po. Here, great miracle happened here. And what they're doing, they're trying to win Chanukah gelt or pennies. But they're also learning to cherish their freedom. They're also learning to worship God. They're also learning to remember their ancestors and important lessons who had to fight to earn that freedom in a much darker time. Now remember the Maccabees won their independence from the Greeks. And one thinks, when you think about Greeks, one of the things a lot of people think about is runners. You think about especially if you're a historian, right? You remember the Battle of Marathon, right? Battle of Marathon. That word's familiar, marathon, right? That's where we get the marathon. Why? Because we won a victory, and they sent a runner to Athens to tell them, which happened to be 20, how long is a marathon? 26 point something, whatever, miles. Yeah, that's how far it was from where the Battle of Marathon was to Athens. And the guy ran the whole way, told him about the victory, and then he dropped dead, by the way. If you know that part. Then he dropped dead. Anyway, Nike, and I think the word he gave was Nike. Nike means victory. Nike! I don't know, would you... I mean, would you name your sneakers after that? I don't know, it means victory, so that's pretty cool. But I mean, the whole... After that story, I don't know, that's kind of weird. Run in these, you'll maybe die, whatever. Kind of strange. Okay, things that we do. So, that was in 490 BC, the Battle of Marathon, giving the good news that there was victory over the Persians. Well, the Greeks aren't the only ones known for runners. You know, on Chanukah, I think it still happens. I don't know if it still happens. I'm pretty sure, because I don't live there. you know? But these days, there's a marathon with torches that first travels to the grave of Mattathias in Modin. What happened in Modin? Who's Mattathias? Mattathias, he's the guy who started the revolt. The old priest wouldn't do the sacrifice. Where? In Modin, right? So now there's a marathon. They run to Modin, and where a fire is lit on these torches in his memory for starting the revolt. The fire of God, right, is rekindled. And then the marathon runs with the torches lit all the way to the Western Wall in Jerusalem at the temple, on the Temple Mount, where a large Chanukah is lit. We've seen that Chanukah, right? And sing songs like Ma'us Tur, Mighty Rock, Rock of Ages, and Who Can Retell? With thanks to the God who preserves us. All these songs remind us of that ancient victory. But what a lot of people don't realize is over time, the Hasmonean dynasty, you know, that's what the Maccabees, they became the rulers, and they became called the Hasmonean dynasty. Series of rulers, a dynasty over time. The same family kept ruling for over time, dynasty. And over time, they kind of forgot why they died. The children became increasingly assimilated to the surrounding Hellenized culture. The children of the Maccabees started to assimilate. They started using Greek. You can look at the names. Their names are, the best among them was Queen Alexandra. That's a good Jewish name, right? Alexandra. Wow. Change. Some people are stronger when the pressure is on. You find that? You're more motivated. Somebody comes in with a Uzi here or something, starts shooting, you're pretty strong in your faith because you think you're going to die. Or you run away from your faith, hoping that the guy won't shoot you. Those are critical junctures in life where you find out what you really believe. Some people are better there with the pressure on. Somehow that's easier. But when the battle's over, they fall, all by themselves. David, when the time came when kings are supposed to be out at war, he's got nothing else to do, pacing back and forth on the roof when he sees a woman. We all know what happened. See, some people can resist external temptations, and yet they fall easily to internal temptations, or vice versa. We need to be strong all the time, not compartmentalize our faith, because our enemy stalks around like a lion, waiting for any opening so that he can strike. We need to be alert. We need our own victories. Back to the story. Some say that those living in the Qumran community, which if you're going on the trip to Israel with us, you'll be going to Qumran, right? Where the Essenes lived and where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. The people who lived there, they were once supporters of the Maccabees until the Maccabees usurped control of the high priesthood. Remember what the Greeks did? Selling the high priesthood? Guess what? After a while, the Maccabees stole the priesthood, the high priesthood. Remember the Torah portion we read last week? Yah appoints his priest. No one should take that honor upon themselves without his calling. Not even if you're a Maccabee. Okay, so all this information and everything for last week provides part of the setting for the Brit Chadashah. There we read of a woman, Hannah, Luke 2:37, a prophetess from the tribe of Asher, who was born around 88 BC, circa 88, when the Maccabean victories were still fresh in people's minds. It was only about the 140s, if I remember right. It's only about 60 people. It was still very fresh for people. Many people today don't know this, but after Chanukah, the Maccabees, called the Hasmoneans, continued to rule and even expand and reconquer all of the biblical land of Israel. You see the map there? The tiny little dark area is what remained of Judea before the revolt against Antiochus, Greek. Despite those victories, since Chanukah, that dynasty, the Hasmoneans had also deteriorated into a web of internal conflict, intrigue, and their own self-imposed assimilation. There were only a few good years, and Hannah would have been around for them. And that happened to be during the reign of Queen Alexandra. That was the only peaceful reign. But it was only 9 years long. After that, her two sons, Alexandra's two sons, fought against each other for the rulership. And the one that was losing, you know what they did? No? They went to the Romans for help. The Romans helped that person, and they kept helping us. They helped us a lot. That's one way to put it. Right? That's how the Romans went into a lot of places. They went in to help. Yeah. It's very likely that Hannah's husband was one of the 12,000 Jews whom Pompey, the Roman general, helped when the Romans killed all of them while conquering Jerusalem in 63 BC. There he is. This faithful woman had been a widow for many years, hoping for a new deliverance, like the Maccabees. It's part of the context of her life. One day she saw the Messiah himself as a baby in the very temple which Yehuda Maccabee had cleansed, and Hannah blessed him, thanked God for him, and spoke to him to everyone who would listen. A mere 30 years later, as Chanukah was drawing near, a famous rabbi began to call himself the light of the world. You can read about that rabbi. It's in John 8:12 and in John, Yochanan 9:5. Can you imagine, though, this guy, this rabbi, this traveling rabbi, this poor, by the way, not rich, poor, traveling rabbi with the little gaggle of people, starts calling himself the light of the world. What gall? What nerve? The nerve of this guy. Oy vey. What a guy. How could he say such things? That same rabbi had been circumcised as a baby in that very same temple that the Maccabees had cleansed. That couldn't have happened without the Maccabees, right? We talked about that last week. There is no Messiah without the Maccabees. There's no Jewish people without the Maccabees. We would have been wiped out. In fact, on Chanukah itself, he came into the temple. John 10 records it. Yochanan, chapter 10, records it. He records a famous confrontation because it was then that he declared himself to the people at the temple who were questioning him and attacking him verbally. He declared himself to be the good shepherd. You know, in Messianic and prophetic writing, the shepherds are the leaders of the people. And certain prophets had talked about those shepherds as being terrible shepherds who exploit the sheep. But he called himself the good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. In Jewish writings in particular, again, that's a metaphor for rulers. Yeshua is saying that he is the good ruler who doesn't abuse or exploit his sheep like the kings of old did, and like someone else was doing right then, a guy named Herod. Rather, he would do anything to save his sheep. This rabbi also said that his deeds revealed who he was. John 10:25, clearly referencing Isaiah 61. More than that, he said he gives eternal life to those who follow him. Think of the reaction that got. Right? What are you saying there, Rabbi? And gasp, that he and the Father are one? In John 10:30. Think about it. This is the story of the gospel being shared by the Messiah at the temple. Think about those things together. That's what this is. He's sharing the story of the gospel. The Messiah is sharing the story of the gospel at the temple during Chanukah. That's what's happening here. He's claiming that he's the one who gave us the Chanukah miracle. Do you see that? He's the light of Chanukah. And he was the one who listened to the prayers of the Maccabees. Have you read the Maccabees? They're praying. They're praying for help. The victory. This is the Messiah, and he chose to reveal himself in the temple with the menorahs blazing at the festival of dedication, Chanukah. Is it really any surprise that when Yochanan wrote his version of the good news, he even chose to introduce the Messiah in John chapter 1 as what? Light. But what about Jewish people today? What about Jewish writing? Well, those are Jewish writings. But I'll give you another one. There's a guy, Rabbi Berechiah. This is in a Midrash. He said, Master of the universe, because you bring light into the world, your name was made great in the world. And what is that light? Redemption. I agree, Rabbi Berechiah. We know, there's the quote for you, we know that God said through David that the Torah is light. In Psalm 119, 105, for example. Psalm 119, 105. Did anybody know that one? What's Psalm 119, 105? Not kidding. Somebody, you need to look it up and read. Somebody read me Psalm 119, 105. Oh.
Is it the one that says?
Yeah, your word is a lamp. You want to put a light on that.
What's the light there? The Word. Word of God. Okay, so David said this, right? This Rabbi Yeshua is the living Word. This man, Yeshua, is our Redeemer. He brings us light and redemption, just like Rabbi Berechiah said, right? One day it looked like this rabbi's light was squelched. But as the prophets foretold, this Rabbi Yeshua defeated death. This Rabbi Yeshua was the ultimate deliverer, the ultimate rescuer. This Rabbi Yeshua is the Son of God who came to grant us forgiveness and free us from our sins. This Rabbi Yeshua was the prophet Moshe told us to obey. This Rabbi is the suffering servant whom Yeshayahu, Isaiah told us would rise from the dead. This Rabbi was Yeshua. Those who really believe in him, who really follow him, they have eternal life. On this day, we recognize that without the faith of the Maccabees, there would be no Messiah. We also recognize that without Yeshua, the Maccabees would have failed. He's our Savior. There's no one else. Isaiah 43:11. God works through faithful people like Noah, like Abraham, like Moshe, like Phineas, like the other Yeshua, the guy who took us into the land after Moshe died, like Shimon, Kepha, like Dan Gruber. Who else? Billy Graham? Who else? Like Denise over there, I hope. Right? Sherelle over here. But the story's not over yet. Antiochus, the fourth Epiphanes, was only a shadow of the anti-Messiah, the man of lawlessness, who will defile the temple and bring more difficulty to the Jewish people than ever before or since. And that is saying quite a bit. Worse than the Holocaust. Worse than the Inquisitions, the Crusades. He too will enter the Holy of Holies, like Antiochus did, in a new temple, and he too will declare himself to be God, like Antiochus did. Antiochus Epiphanes, the visible God. That time period will be known as, it's called in the scriptures, the time of Jacob's trouble. Jeremiah 30, verses 4 to 7, Zechariah 13, verses 8 and 9. You can read about it. If you're watching the news, you might think we're headed for that right now. I think we are. Nevertheless, in the end, there is good news. For Yeshua will return and win a victory even greater than that of Yehuda and the Maccabees. He will not just save Israel as they did, but all who believe in him, and he will establish his worldwide reign. We talked about the parallels, right? But we only talked about one side. Who are the new Maccabees going to be? I hope so. I hope it's us. But what characterizes that? What characterized the old Maccabees? What will characterize the new Maccabees?
Setting apart. Setting yourself apart.
Setting yourself apart. How?
By not allowing the culture to,
Following Torah.
Yeah.
by not assimilating, basically.
By not assimilating, by following the Torah, by saying, no, you know what? I had enough.
Drawing a line in the sand.
No, I'm tired of it. I had enough. No more. We all have a sword. If you don't, I'll buy one for you. You all have a sword. If you have a phone, you have a sword. There's free apps, right? You know what I'm talking about. Your scriptures. But it's not enough to have a sword. Did you know that? You can't go into the battle with a sword. It's not enough. You got to use the sword.
And the shield.
And the shield too. The shield is defensive. The Maccabees, it wasn't all about defense. You have swords and you need to use those swords. There's a culture war going on right now. And you know where it's headed. We talked about it. You know where it's headed. Who wins? It's going to be dark. It's going to be bad for a while. But who wins? And who are the Maccabees? Maccabees remain faithful. Maccabees follow God's ways. They don't assimilate to the changing culture that keeps drifting off and becoming more and more evil. They're the ones who say, enough. The ones who say, no, no more. Not for me, thank you. It'll be called the time of Jacob's trouble. Now, once you remember the Shamash candle, you remember the Shamash candle? Which one is that?
Middle.
It could be the middle. It's one that's set apart. Sometimes it's in the middle and set up higher. Sometimes you have it on the end and it's kind of set off like on a corner or something. Mm-hmm. And some of you may have noticed the quote I said before, I was only partial. What Yeshua said in those days leading up to Chanukah was, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. It's a qualifier, right? You know about grammar? While I am in the world, I'm the light of the world. John 9:5. However, before he left the world, he said to his followers that they are the light of the world. That's you. They are to carry on in his footsteps. They are his hands and feet in this world. We are his servants, living the way he did and proclaiming that good news that the Messiah has come. Undoubtedly, many hate us for it. Every one of us is engaged in a spiritual battle. A maelstrom is growing all around us. Pastors, even denominations, are capitulating, performing same-sex marriages, abominations in God's eyes. the government is becoming increasingly oppressive towards believers, and society is becoming increasingly anti-Bible. And yet I ask you openly, where do you stand? Would you prefer to do what's right, though it might cost you something, or remain comfortable and silent, like most Christians did in the 1930s in Germany? You want to be comfortable and silent and be blown around with whatever winds are prevailing? Or will you stand for the truth like the Maccabees did? And not be assimilated? What's the verse here? Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Let God change your thinker so you won't be a stinker. Let me encourage you, acknowledging the intensity of our spiritual battle. Shaul said to the Roman believers the same thing that I say to you. And that's this verse. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, to the ways of this world, but be transformed by the renewing, the constant, active, present tense renewing of your mind. How do you do that? Stay in contact with Him through prayer and stay in the Bible, learning more and growing in it. That's how you renew your mind. You have to learn the new ways to do the new ways. Pray for help so that you can do it. The Spirit of God is able to help you do it. You can do it. The same Spirit, the same power that raised the Messiah from the dead is alive and well in you. He will tell you what to do, whisper in your ear, but you've got to do it. He can help you, but you've got to ask. He has given us, Kepha said, Shimon Kepha. He has given us, past tense, all things concerning godliness. What does that mean? You don't have any excuses. That's what it means. If I only had more faith. You got the access. Ask. Ask. And how do you build faith? By faith cometh by
Hearing the word of God.
And how do you grow stronger? How do you grow stronger physically? Right? You've got to use those muscles. How do you grow stronger then spiritually? It's the same. You don't get stronger spiritually. What do we mean spiritually? Is this some fluffy out there thing? Growing stronger spiritually is how you live your life. If you're following God, you're following God closer, obeying Him, that's growing spiritually. How do you come to obey God more and more? You got to take the first step. And then you got to take the second step. And then you got to it doesn't start on its own. You got to do it. You got to start. He'll help you. He'll guide you, tell you where to go, shine the light, shout it in your ear if He needs to. But you've got to be the one to say, okay, help me. Go. You got to be the one to move. Right? Put one foot in front of the other. I'm dorky. Sorry. But, if you get that tune in your head, it might help you. I just can't stop doing this, God. How do I get started doing that, God? Spirit whisper in your ear. Put one foot in front of the other. Now you will, right? Okay. All right. You know what? So that's what he said. If you're in sin and you need to be restored, I have good news. God can save Israel. He can save you. Make Yeshua your master. That's what Lord means. It's antiquated term. That's master. Adonai, master. Follow him and find peace in the midst of the storm. Am I right?
Amen.
Anybody done it? Follow him and experience the ultimate victory. The Nike. But you won't fall down and die. This Nike. You cannot earn his salvation, but the good news is that he offers it to you freely. Do you understand how that works? It's so why? What's the Torah then? What's that about? That's about following him, not following his ways, being grateful, acknowledging he's the king. When you come to him, he's your master, then you follow his way. That's what he says. He says, how do you call me Lord? He's talking to the people. How do you call me Lord? You don't do what I say. At the judgment, he separates people and he says, get away from me, you workers of lawlessness. What law is he talking about? The laws of the United States? Is he talking about the law of gravity? What kind of the laws of God, the Torah? It's very obvious if you think about it. Some people don't want to think about it. How should we live then? Almost every generation has a need for godly people. Every generation has a need for godly people, like the Maccabees, like Esther, like Ruth. This generation needs more people like Chanukah, Matthias, and Yehuda the Maccabee. Will you take up that call? In every generation, there's a need for restoration, for dedication and commitment. Maybe you've been captured by your enemy and you need God's help to break free. Maybe you've broken free, but you need to recommit yourself. You know, believers are called the temple of God. Maybe your temple needs cleansing. Who's been in your temple? What have you allowed to come into your temple? There are windows to your temple. What's going in there? On this Chanukah, will you choose to be like Chanukah and work with and walk with God? Or will you assimilate? Will you stand with Yeshua? Or will you deny him? Is it too much to ask that you confess your faith in the one true God in an era when it's unpopular, when you might face persecution for it? Will you be like Yehuda the Maccabee? Will you stand up for what's right and is right? Let me encourage you with words of power. Say with me, Chazak.
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 Venit.
Venit.
Chazek.
Chazak.
Be strong. Be strong. I'm not just reading the words to you. I'm blessing you. I'm telling you. I'm pouring this out on you. Be strong. Be strong. Be ye strengthened. Let him fill you with strength. Don't capitulate. Don't assimilate. Let him renew your mind. Let him guide you. Take the steps. Walk it out. Pick up your sword and use it. You need to be brave. What if someone from ISIS threatens you with death unless you recant your faith in Yeshua? Things happen in the United States like this now. What will you say? What if you're a doctor and they're trying to force you to perform certain operations that you know are unbiblical? What will you do? And there's not just one. You know, in some countries there's forced sterilization, for example. You know, we have healthcare systems in some places that are just so burdensome financially that at a certain point you do have these panels where people, you know, do we pay so many hundreds of thousands of dollars to save this person who's 80-something years old? Do we do that? It's no longer in the hands of a healthcare provider, being a doctor, or the patient, if they have the funds available. Now it's in the hands of people. Is it economically good for society if we waste this money by saving this person's life? Are you the doctor? Are you going to perform euthanasia on someone that does not want it because the government says so? The light stands out in the darkness. In fact, it stands out more as the darkness deepens. When things are great in this country, when people were living Leave It to Beaver days, hard to stand out as a believer, maybe. Depends where you are. There were areas, right? There are things that were going on sometimes. You could stand out, for sure. Absolutely. And in some ways, we've gotten better, right? Since those days. Absolutely. But there's no doubt that things are getting worse. And when the world gets dark, the lights that are left shine brighter. You willing to risk that? Will you dare to be different? This is a great message for the postmodern world, thick with the darkness of its confusion and thick with the multitude of voices. Maybe your world is a dark place and you need some light. There is a God, and he can rescue you no matter what sort of odds you're facing. Remember, God is light and there's no darkness in him. 1 John 1:5. With him you can find your way. You will see the truth. Come to him and he will give you strength. I end with this, an interesting statement found in the Art Scroll Masorah series publication in Chanukah, of all places, on page 104. Quote, it's up here, third one down. The light is kindled to give inspiration, for the light of Messiah must burn brightly in our hearts. I wholeheartedly agree with this, and I pray that it will be so as we leave here today. You never know. We may never see each other again. So let me leave you with this. Don't hide your light under a bushel. Rather, Yeshua said that despite persecution, you are to let it shine for all the world to see, that they may glorify your Father in heaven. That's Matthew 5:11-16. Serve the Master and dispel the darkness. The world, you know, how do you beat the darkness? Kung Fu? Just flick on the light switch. Dispel the darkness. The world needs him, and you are his hands and feet in this world. This is a season when he revealed himself to be the Messiah, and it's a season for rededication. My final word to you is this: do not waver in your faith, as Yaakov or James said. Quote, blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord Adonai has promised to those who love him. Yochanan said, if you love him, he'll know the one who loves him, what? Keeps his commandments. Lord of breakthroughs, God of our fathers, God of the covenants, please help us to drive the enemy out of our lives and to cleanse these bodies, our temples, and dedicate or rededicate them to you. On this festival of light, fill us with your light. Help us to live according to our faith, forgive our sins, save us, and enable us to stand with your Son, the Messiah, the light of the world, our King, Yeshua. Amen. And before we play the dreidel game, we gotta have a blessing, right? I don't know. Let's see. Some of you are like, I don't want to play dreidel now. I'm too tired. So we'll get in our circle. This is what we do. And why do we do this? Why do we stand in the circle? No one read that verse. Why do we stand in the circle? No one stands alone.
Oh,
here.
that's right.
We're family, right? So this symbolizes that. We're family. We stand together. Adonai bless you and keep you. Adonai make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. Adonai lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom. Hashem Yeshua. Amen. Alrighty. Okay.
Get my hug on the way in, good to see you.
So we're going to bring some, a few things in here, like some food and stuff. Welcome to eat it and stay with us. And we're going to, huh? They're gone? Oh. Okay, we can stay here anyway, because we got it.
I got you.
So we'll get the food and stuff, we'll roll it over here in the carts, and enjoy each other's company a little while. If you want to, we're going to get the dreidel, you can learn how to play the dreidel and win stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot of years ago. So that's, yeah, Hashem says, you know, we all were like, what? Our pacemakers, so just keep praying. Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks for having us. Like the way throwing those prayers all over. And then that's true.
Yeah.
Outside, inside, all the way behind time. Just gets into my phone too. Oh, it's just, let me put this up.
A lot of the nieces, they have three. It's usually the three Marias, right?
There's never a word stuff.
There's not too many reasons.
No. There's a little.
We did the outreach on Sunday, talked about the highlight of my, the highlight of my week. Other than that, I'm working on a lot. Last week we really had this really bad day. We both work from home, but he's just not really able to. And when we have it,
There's no light.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know. Turns out my father-in-law's married. That's why this last week.
All right.
Saturday. But it was like an evening, but it's just really far, so like, and I guess he calls his step's brother-in-law. And he has a nonprofit, and we have a so it was really crazy to get him and my husband were talking. Somebody told my new brother-in-law that we did, we go downtown and stuff. So he thought that we had like a reservation. And he asked her, and she was like, oh no, we just go. And then he was like, oh, he was like, yeah, all right. And he said, oh, no, I do rocks, and I just got my 501c. Really? So he got his 501c, so he ended up coming with us Sunday because I asked him at the wedding, at the reception, right? I was like, well, if you're spending the night tonight, why don't you, I'm kind of short staffed, or why don't you come, you'll possibly come and help me tomorrow. Well, it worked out because my husband was sort of completed from the wedding and he couldn't come. So he came, he brought his niece. So we got two for one special, and she did all the hygiene and did help out with stuff, and he packs off, and he wants to come partner with us. He basically has so much stuff, and he doesn't have enough people to give it to. I was like, what did you just say to me? I was like, you know how hard it is to get socks? Like, that is my #1 problem, is getting socks. And my neighbor had brought over like 2 packs of socks. She's so sweet. She went to Walmart to buy these socks just for this. She surprised me as she came over on Sunday morning. She was like, I brought you socks. And I was like, thanking God for these socks. And then here comes this guy who's like, I want to come back. And I have like, he gets like sneakers too. Like he gets them like 300 at a time. I know. I was like, tell me that father is not orchestrating these things. And this is my new brother-in-law. I was like, oh, wow. And I would have never guessed it. He's he's a younger dude. Turns out he was military. He's like a veteran now. We tend to stereotype. So he just doesn't look like the type of guy that you would expect to come out and say, I run holy socks. He's like all tatted up. It's hysterical. He's got the Fu Manchu beard. He's got a lot of swagger too. He's like very swagger. I was just like, did he just say holy socks? Turns out when he's like on fire for the Lord, he was talking to my mom while we were down there. I didn't talk to him that much. But apparently, he's like completely sold out for God. And he's all excited about it. And I'm like, just sitting back and shocked. Like, all right. Isn't that amazing though? Like, socks and sneakers and backpacks, the three things that I'm always looking for. Yeah, you're listening to Diana? Wow. What I'm always asking for what? The socks, the backpacks, and shoes. Like, those are like the three hardest things to get, right? Right. Yeah. Turns out my new brother-in-law runs a nonprofit in Tampa called Holy Socks. And he has some hookup where he gets like 300 at a time. He gets socks, backpacks, and sneakers. Oh, okay. And he was here for the wedding on Saturday night, so we got talking, and I was like, well, since you're all, about it, why don't you come with me tomorrow morning? And he was like, okay. And I was like, kind of skeptical at first, because it was like, a long late night party. So I was like, I wonder if he's really going to get up and make it. He's having a great time, And he ended up, he called me bright and early. He met me downtown, and it turns out he gets like socks like 300 at a time. He gets sneakers like several hundred at a time. Wow. Yeah, he has these people donate like in large quantities. He has so many, and he can't give them all away in Tampa. So he wants to give them to us. I was like, wow, how about that? He even had some backpacks with them when he came. Brand new with Yankees logos on them. I was like, unbelievable. It was just amazing. And his niece wants to volunteer. She's like, even if you can't come, just let me know and I want to come. She's young too, so it's just really cool to see a she's a teenager. She's not even an adult, she's a teenager. She has such a heart for serving. She took care of those people with the hygiene and stuff. And I gave her fun. I think she liked it too because I did a lot of like copper jewelry, like copper wood and makeup. And so we feel like you can tell that look for their color, try to find something that matches them. She got all into it. She's like, oh look, I think this is your color. They put it on my eyes. Like, all right, you did a great job. And that's what I wanted. And now for the 30th, my friend, Mariela, is going to paint nails. She volunteered. I said, if I wanted to find somebody to paint nails. Turns out she's been painting nails at some youth center for little girls. So she's like, good at painting nails. And not only that, but she is very passionate and on fire for Yeshua. And she knows a lot of things to truth, and she's just a very social, lovely person. So as she's painting the nails, she's the whole point of commitment to people while you're sitting there. So she's like the perfect person for that. John. It really is coming together. It's not an issue, that's amazing. I don't think it's from that. I was like, every time that I think, yummy, that it's just, hard, and then it makes it so easy. So I'm going to get the name stop and right, and and all of a sudden, I realized, oh, I should paint some nails.